Welcome, listeners, to the Timbo Talks podcast, coming to you from my garage. Yes, you heard that right. Yesterday, I spent several hours clearing out all the clutter and the crap from my garage to make space for a dedicated podcast recording studio. And when I say studio, I mean a desk and a microphone. But I like the idea of recording a podcast in a garage. Garages to me have a real DIY feel. Like doing something in a garage, creating something in a garage feels like the beginning of great things. And many great things have come out of garages. For instance, Apple computers, meth. I'm sure there's other things, I just can't think of them at the moment. Anyway, the decluttering process has really lifted my spirits, and I feel like a chat with you, dear listener. Plus, I feel less self-conscious spending time staring at this large, thick, tall microphone. It's so audaciously erect with its little red blinking light. It's actually making me question my orientation. The label on the microphone is Blue Yeti, but perhaps it should be called Blue Chew Yeti. That's a little Viagra reference there for my older listeners. I hope you appreciate it. I feel like I'm really popping today. Perhaps it's got something to do with the time I just spent in the sun. If you haven't been out in the sun today, I recommend it. If you're feeling down or stressed, your mood will lift. And that's not just me rambling, that's science. You're not anti-science, are you? Exposure to sunlight will help create vitamin D, which will lift your mood. It'll help improve your immune system. God knows we do need strong immune systems now, since a strong immune system, of course, will protect you from the set of negative conditions that will present in your body if you're exposed to a particularly nasty virus. Apparently there's one going around at the moment. Also, something I just read the other day, I find this really interesting. A study finds over 80% of COVID-19 patients have vitamin D deficiency. And to all my male listeners, the subheading there is vitamin D deficiency was more prevalent in men. So this was from Spain. Over 80% of 200 COVID-19 patients in a hospital in Spain have vitamin D deficiency, according to a new study published in the Endocrine Society's Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism. So there you go. There's a data point there. Vitamin D. Not only will you feel better, your mood will be better, you will avoid the dreaded COVID-19. Anyway, don't take my word for it if you want to Google it. The manuscript is called Vitamin D Status in Hospitalized Patients with SARS-CoV-2 Infection. Was published online ahead of print. It's interesting. Why don't we hear more about this? I mean, prevention is always better than the cure, isn't it? So if there's data to suggest that we need to get outside and get that vitamin D, why are we not hearing about it? Well, because it's good news. And I don't know if you've noticed, but good news just ain't that popular at the moment. But anyway, I'm not going to let my mood suffer. I'm still coasting on all that residual vitamin D I got on my walk, which was a lovely walk, and it felt deeply symbolic to me because as I was walking down the sidewalk, I turned left to cut through a park beside the local public school, and there was a row of these green timber posts, and as I got closer to one, I saw on top of it was this giant green bug. Like it was shining in the sun. It was like a green iridescent gem, what we call a cicada, and it must have just emerged from, I don't think cocoon is the right word, but it starts as a grub, then becomes like a crawling like beetle thing, and then it goes through a metamorphosis and it emerges out of its carapace, and it's this beautiful, enormous green bug with these pearlescent eyes and these wonderful wings, and I took a photograph of it. I should leave the photo in the show notes of this podcast, and then it flew off. Anyway, I'd never actually seen a fresh one. I'd always seen the remains they'd left behind, their husk that they exit. So this felt like a new beginning, a new green beginning. And while today feels like a new beginning for me, I have a spring in my step, a twinkle in my eye. I don't think it's unreasonable to say that today feels like a new beginning to a lot of people, particularly if you open Twitter or read the headlines. As I record this, it's looking more and more likely that Joe Biden will be announced as the next president of the United States. Maybe. That's what the numbers point to. Of course, elections are always an opportunity for people to collectively engage in a great catharsis and purge all their negative feelings, because depending on where you live, depending on what the political process is in your country, depending if you even live in a functioning democracy, you can, with your fellow citizens, rock up to the polling booth, cast your vote, and ritually kill the bad king. This is not a new idea, and it's not one that was invented with democracy. In ages past, different cultures would have these mechanisms or psychological pressure valves where the ruler, it was believed that the forces of nature were embodied in the ruler, and their health and their ability to do things would ensure the stability of the society or culture they presided over. And whenever the king or leader or whoever was in high office, whenever it became clear that their power was faltering or there was something wrong with them, they weren't voted out. They were literally killed. They were sacrificed to make way for the new blood and the new leader, to replenish the whole idea of leadership. And, basically because I don't think humans have really changed as much as we think we have. We are still enacting these ancient psychodramas, but everything has a secular gloss. And I get it. I understand why people would be jubilant about Trump leaving after only one term. Although I will say it's odd that his likely replacement is not someone filled with vim or vigour, but compared to Trump physically, seems like a walking corpse, which is doubly unusual when you see that his party, Biden's party, had plenty of people that were filled with new ideas and energy. I mean, hell, even Bernie Sanders, an old man himself, seemed to have far more energy and progressive ideas than Joe Biden. But anyway, I'm not going to get mired in the US political process. It is completely polarizing. And if I analyse my own feelings, I'm not a US citizen, but Trump was the ever-present headline from 2016 to now. I mean, God, it would just be a relief to open Twitter and not see a headline about him. As an aside, I wonder if we're going to see a further collapse in mainstream media, because the dude generated a lot of clicks. His content drove a lot of eyeballs. So, what's everyone going to talk about now? The end of the Trump presidency, though, I'll be honest, it fills me with fear, but not because I liked him. It's because I think the end of the Trump presidency is humanity hitting the snooze button. You know what the snooze button is. You've set your alarm. You have to be up at 6. You have to spring out of bed. There's an important meeting at work. You got to get the kids to school. Hitting the snooze button is delaying the inevitable. When we hit the snooze button, we're saying, screw this, I don't want to get out of bed. I want to sleep in a little longer. I want to go easy on myself. I deserve it. So a figure like Trump, who's so over the top. If you jumped in a time machine, I don't think time machines exist, by the way, but let me humour you. If a time machine did exist and you jumped in it and you went back to, say, 1994, or maybe the end of the first Bush presidency, George H.W. Bush's presidency when Bill Clinton was coming in, and you told everyone that in the future Donald Trump would be the president. I mean, they'd sanction you. You'd end up in a padded room under observation. So the fact that such an unlikely figure as Donald Trump did become the president, I really think it was a wake-up call. And now that it looks like he's on the way out, I think the snooze button has been hit. And that's bad. For me, what I think the wake-up call was really trying to tell humanity was it's actually time to grow up. It's actually time to assume the responsibilities of adulthood and not act like small children. A person like Donald Trump, with all his bluster, his boorishness, his crassness, his chauvinism, I mean, you name it, really calls into question for me the whole idea of leaders. I mean, a fully realised adult, if they do accept the responsibilities of adulthood, is a fully realised, healthy adult knows they can no longer look to daddy or mummy to help them. They have to take responsibility for their own lives, and by extension the responsibility of those they have responsibility for, their family. Donald Trump is the ultimate dysfunctional father. And I'm sorry to say, all of us, especially men, but all of us, we've all got daddy issues. And so the presence of Donald Trump, it's an infantilizing presence because we're mad because daddy's acting in a way that's bad and we've never made peace with our own fathers. Very few of us in this life get to confront our own fathers for what we feel they did wrong. Very few of us get to confront our own fathers and tell them, listen, Dad, that time you did this, that and the other, that really set me back. It pissed me off. That was the wrong thing to do as a father. But because many of us don't get to do that when we're confronted with the ultimate dysfunctional father figure like Donald Trump, we react. The original hurt, our original trauma, our unresolved issues with our own father, it flares up and we project it onto Donald Trump, who, is not a great example, granted, but really, instead of hitting the snooze button, we should have looked inside of ourselves and gone, you know what, that was bad. I didn't like what my father did to me, but I am an adult now. I can't go through life blaming my father or my mother for all my problems. Even if the way they parented you set you back in life, there comes a point where you have to walk away from that. But instead, now we've hit the snooze button, we're going to get out of bed and we're going to be, thank God, we've got a better father. I think that was the wrong lesson to take from all this. And the great thing, or should I say the bad thing about unresolved psychological issues is when you hit the snooze button, it's only for a short while. So what we didn't work through in the last 4 years, it is going to come back and bite us on the ass. Sorry to say that, but I am talking to adults. Adult to adult. I would love to wake up tomorrow morning to find myself in a world surrounded by people who had looked back on the last 4 years and decided that they were going to accept the responsibilities of adulthood. They were going to look inward at themselves, also outward as well, their immediate communities, because that's the only politics that matters. I'm sorry to break it to you, but the only politics that matters is local politics. How you can affect positive change in your own immediate community. And I would walk down the street and my face would be beaming because each person I would wave to who passed me by, I would understand that they were a fully realised adult and they had shaken off this infantile shackle of being mad at their father. But sadly, I don't think that's what we're going to get. Already, I can see indications to the contrary. I just saw a tweet from someone where they were reposting a map of the United States where each state was coloured either blue or red based on voting preferences, and their message with the tweet was, "This is a handy map because it can show you, if you travel to the US, where not to go and to avoid all the racist territories." That is a crazily bad take. How can you, in such a binary way, paint a whole country as either good or bad based on two primary colours? I mean, grow the fuck up. That is not accepting adulthood. That is traumatized children pointing the finger at each other and going, "I'm really glad Mum booted out her latest boyfriend. He was an asshole. He beat Mum every night, but at least her new boyfriend will only put arsenic in her coffee and he'll keep quiet about it." So rather than grow up and do the opposite, double down on our differences based on our original trauma, our misgivings with how Daddy treated us, what are we going to do? Are we going to constantly point the finger at people who have a different political preference to us? Are we going to demonize them with the broad stroke of a brush dipped in brightly coloured paint? I mean, what's your suggestion? Is it to split up countries based on a difference of opinion? Should we just secede from the people we disagree with? I like that word, secede. What about those of us, and I know you're out there, you're just keeping quiet. What about those of us who don't want to play these games anymore? Can we secede? Where would we go? A hidden valley like the one the elves live in The Lord of the Rings? Or perhaps an island? How would we defend ourselves from stupidity? That wouldn't work because we transcended the labels of blue or red and we actually came together and we grew up. We'd actually be purple people, which is a mixture of red and blue coming together. And before you colour Nazis get on my case about the fact that blue and red do not make purple, I know that, but that's only because when people mix blue and red, they use tubes of paint that contain yellow, which desaturates purple. Science, once again. You're not anti-science, are you? Anyway, people with deep emotional issues who can't let go of their pain and identify with it closely, the blues and the reds, they would look on at the purples with envy and overrun us. And there's nothing we could do except escape and set up our glorious purple commune somewhere else. By the way, kind of hilarious that in Australia, down under the southern hemisphere where everything is reversed, blue and red are completely different, because in Australian politics, people who have professed progressive values tend to identify themselves with the party that is red, Labor, and whereas what we term conservative values, these are all gross simplifications, by the way. I don't buy into any of this bullshit. But anyway, just for the purpose of discussion, what we term as conservative values, those people tend to identify with the blue party, the Liberals, which is a giant mindfuck because the term liberal means something completely different to us in Australia. See how dumb this stuff is? These arbitrary boundaries around things. We're all flesh and blood. And you know what? I think people, when you meet them one-on-one and you spend time with them, are really quite reasonable. People are reasonable. Why is it that this is drummed into us? There's always us and them. Well, now that Trump, the bad father, is gone, who's going to be the big bad this time? I mean, what have we had in the past? We had the communist threat, the Cold War. I mean, growing up in the 80s, there was the spectre of nuclear annihilation because of the arms race between the free world and the Soviets. When that was gone, we had the ever-present terrorists. now we've got this virus. That seems to be running out of puff as well. I mean, Trump got the coronavirus and he bounced back and he's an old man. So you heard it here. There will be another big bad. I don't know what it is. We're running out of big bads. I'm partial to the idea of aliens as big bads. I mean, I was a science fiction fan growing up. So, I mean, that would be a lot cooler now that we have to come together to fight aliens. It's so much more interesting than communism, terrorism, the coronavirus, or a rogue President Trump. So I welcome our new alien overlords, which I'm sure we'll be hearing about shortly. I wonder what colour they will be, actually. I think beige is a good colour for aliens. I mean, there's something so innocuous about beige, it's offensive. I mean, beige speaks to hidden danger, but they're probably going to be grey. Greenish grey, because nobody likes grey. Things have to be clear. They have to be black or white. They have to be primary colours. Grey, we don't do grey. Humans don't do grey. Grey areas, nope. Sorry. Are you an alien sympathiser? Get away from me with your grey bullshit. I mean, aliens would definitely be a big winner. What sounds more exciting to you in a post-Trump world? That we improve our communities, create collective neighbourhood gardens, food gardens so we can take control of our food supply, be kind to each other, or manning up and fighting the aliens. I mean, that's hard. It would be hard to compete with the alien narrative because it sounds fucking cool. There was a pretty entertaining movie years ago, I think it was in the 90s. It was based on a much older book called Starship Troopers, but in the movie version, I think I read the book in high school and it wasn't written in an ironic tone. It was written in a very serious tone where you had different classes of citizens and the civilians were not on the same level as the careerist military types, because the military types were praised for their self-sacrifice because they would volunteer to fight in this ongoing interstellar war that the humans were waging against these bug-like creatures. There were these other aliens too, they called them the skinnies. But anyway, by the time it was made into a Hollywood movie, they didn't have the skinnies, it was just the humans fighting these bugs. And yeah, it was quite confronting watching the movie because it was really humorous. And the director had chosen to explicitly amplify really the whole fascist drive or narrative of the book Starship Troopers, and that the only life worth living was in service of the state, and the state was in constant war with the ever-present enemy, which were the bugs. And what are you going to do? Are you going to be a cowardly, coddled citizen whose way of life is basically brought to you by the bravery of the men and women fighting the aliens? Or are you going to take responsibility and surrender your individuality to the political system and engage in this constant war against the bugs? Anyway, I can see why aliens would work for our political system. I think there's a lot of gas in the alien tank. You heard it here. Anyway, I hope we defeat those alien bastards so we can then spread out safely through the solar system and build a beautiful purple spacefaring civilization. Don't you think it's strange that in The Matrix, which is like a classic modern fable of awakening to the real world and shaking off the world of illusion, isn't it strange that the pills, there was the red pill, which is the pill Morpheus offered Neo as played by Keanu Reeves. It was the red pill to actually find out how to awaken to what the world really is, and the blue pill was to go back to the world of comfortable illusion. Isn't it strange we have these primary colours in that, the blue and the red? Very suspicious. Why wasn't it a purple pill, for God's sake? Is that just more state-sponsored propaganda, the Matrix movie? I hope not. Damn, it was a cool movie. But, you know, next time, if it's remade, whoever remakes it, can you just, slip a purple pill in there? I mean, credibility, people. I think my whole purple argument, though, there's a chink in the armour of my purple argument, because if I do push this idea of transcending blue and red and going purple, well, our enemies they already have some ready-made propaganda to sow dissent and suspicion about our purple way of life. I mean, the song Purple People Eater, I mean, that's clearly anti-purple propaganda. Very suspicious that the people eater is purple. Yeah, sure, it's alliteration, but I think it's poisonous lies about the purple way of life. I don't care for it. Yes, it's time to retire the whole idea of blue versus red. I mean, it's almost a retro concept, blue versus red. When I think about that, I really think about the Cola Wars, Coke, red, versus Pepsi, blue, in the 1980s. That was a big deal. What side would you come down on? Coke or Pepsi? What did that conflict give us anyway? I mean, it just led to bad things. It led to tooth decay, obesity, and I think Michael Jackson's hair caught on fire too. Remember that? He was filming a Pepsi commercial and some fireworks went off near him, and yeah, poor Michael's head caught on fire. His hair was a casualty of one of the great red versus blue conflicts of the past. It's bad. Plus, it's really a fake concept anyway. Like, who wins? Is it Coke? Is it Pepsi? Well, that's just personal preference. That's like a reflection of your personality. The marketing materials from each cola manufacturer are appealing to different parts of your psyche. Who's to say what's better? How can you unequivocally vote one better than the other? Because the real winner is the people behind the scenes making the high fructose corn syrup, which both drinks are based on. High fructose corn syrup is not good for you. If I ever do realise my purple utopia, there won't be many prohibitions, but I think high fructose corn syrup will be one of the few prohibitions. That word fructose it's aggressive, sounds rude. Keep that fructose away from me. Why don't you go fructose yourself, Mr. Cola Pusher? We don't want any of your poison here on our purple island. No, thank you. And really, our political system, it's a facade like the Cola Wars. I mean, it's not the free market fighting communism. It's not capitalism trying to triumph over socialism. These are just labels like Coke and Pepsi. It's much bigger than that story. It's like, do we centralise all power and authority into the hands of a few unaccountable people, or do we distribute responsibility? Because when you concentrate power centrally into the hands of a few, you get what we have today. You get wars still raging in different countries. I mean, the Afghanistan conflict is still going on. What's it even about? It doesn't matter if it's El Presidento Coca-Cola or El Presidento Pepsi Maximus. These are just the aesthetics changing, but the ability to wage war and inflict violence on poor brown people in other countries remains and must be pursued. But purple people have thrown off the shackles of these childish and outdated notions, and dangerous notions, I might say as well. I mean, children with access to nuclear weapons, it ain't good. So there's another point of difference with my purple utopia and end decentralisation. Decentralisation is cool. Decentralisation is walking only a block away, not only to buy food, but buying it in the knowledge that it was grown only a block from you. Decentralisation is being responsible for your own power, your own energy supply. That would be a more resilient society if every few blocks there was a little solar-fed power station or whatever the technology was. Decentralisation is being at peace with your neighbours and not viewing them through the red or blue prism labels that have been affixed to them by some unaccountable body in some city or country miles from you. These are purple ideas, ideas whose time has come. Purple is the colour of decentralisation. Purple is inclusive. Purple is freedom. That doesn't mean red or blue disappears from the face of the earth. We can still have red and blue, just like we have medieval fairs where we can go pay our money to attend and see people reenact medieval battles between knights or people jousting on horseback, and we can titter to ourselves and go, wow, isn't it amazing how people used to act this way? And then at the end of the day, we can return to our purple homes and our purple communities, safe in the knowledge that we've cast off such childish notions. Oh, it sounds like I'm promoting the idea of a cult, and the world probably doesn't need any new cults. But really, this is just a different way of thinking of this never-ending conflict. I'm not literally saying dress up in purple and identify yourself as a purple person. It's just a shortcut to thinking differently. Because, of course, if I got my wish and created a purple society, the usurpers would slip in and lull everyone into a false sense of security and make them think that they too were purple adherents and they had done away with the childish notions of red and blue. But really, it's to seduce us into thinking that they too are purple, when what they want is they want to take hold of the reins of purple power for themselves and for their own profit, rather than the profit of the wider community. So the purple way, while better, requires eternal vigilance. Yesterday's utopia is today's oppressive organisation. Isn't it sad that in 2020 we're still playing these games where we're puffing out our chest and proudly identifying ourselves as this or that? I mean, I remember the years before 2000 where 2000 seemed so far away. It was almost an unreachable event horizon, but once we got beyond 2000, we would live in a futuristic utopia. We'd have robot butlers, flying cars, bases on the moon. We'd be mining asteroids. We would have cured all diseases, division, racism, political division, sexism, chauvinism, all these sort of phobias related to people's different identities. We would have transcended it. But here we are. We're actually living in the future. 2020 is a futuristic date, but it just feels like the past. It just feels like a blurry number that we catch out of the corner of our eye as we relentlessly hammer the hamster wheel that we're all caught in. 2020, for such a futuristic sounding year, things sure seem tired and backwards. So the next time you're tempted to weigh in on a Facebook argument or a lively Twitter thread where red and blue are hurling accusations at each other, their data points, accusing each other of monstrous inhuman behaviour, you can walk away and be an adult. Or if you must contribute, say, have you tried purple? Purple? What's that? Well, we take the red and we take the blue, combine them together and create something new. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you want to find me on the socials, I am Timbo Horan on Twitter and Instagram. That's TimboHoran. Until next time.